C.S. Lewis said this. He says, if you read history, you will find that the Christians who did the most for the present world are those who thought the most about the next. And that is how we need to live our lives. And I believe that that's exactly what Jesus is getting at as he continues to speak to us in Matthew 24 as we finish this chapter. And what we're going to see today is that how we need to live in light of his soon return. And so in verses 32 through 35, what we're going to see is that we need to be discerning and attentive. In verse 32, now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branches have already become tender and it puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. So Jesus is using now a fig tree as a parable. We had a very sad week at my house. If you've ever been to my house, you know in my front yard we had this birch tree. And we watched this birch tree, and we watched the birds go in the birch tree and poke holes in the birch tree and build a nest in the birch tree. And then all of a sudden we watched this birch tree get infested by birch beetles. And then we watched as the top started dying, and it started dying. Well, this week we showed up, and the guys came down and cut our birch tree down. It was a sad day. I'm not a tree hugger, but my wife is a tree lover. So to console her, because I'm such a loving husband, not to pat myself on the back, I said to her, let's go look for a new tree, dear, because I love you so much. So we drive over to Sonora, to the place where they have trees, and we walked around looking at trees. Did I mention I'm not a tree hugger or a tree lover? Trees are expensive. I'm thinking, can we just put that one back and paint it? I don't know. And we're walking around, and what are we looking at? We're looking at the leaves. We're looking at what color are they going to turn. Each tree was distinct in its own measure. Each tree pretty much had its own characteristics that made it unique. Some of them had long little seed pods. Some had those little balls that have the little spikes at it. I remember those as a kid because we'd take them and throw them at each other. Some had no fruits. Some had fruits. It was, some had big leaves. Some had small leaves. And we're looking at these trees, and we're walking around, and we're looking at them, and we're looking at trees, and we're looking at more trees. After a while, a tree is just a tree. But we settled on the tree that we like. You can ask Connie. It even has a name. Did you know that trees have names? This one's named. I'm like, it's not Bob or Larry. It's something else. But we decided on a tree because of its characteristics. Well, that's kind of what Jesus does here by using a fig tree as a parable for us. He says, look at this fig tree. There's something unique about it. There's something that you can learn about the kingdom of heaven as you look at a fig tree. Jesus says, look at it and learn. And that word learn means this. It means to increase in knowledge. And so what Jesus is wanting is us to look at this fig tree that he is talking about here in the nation of Israel. He wants us to increase our knowledge about his soon return. Psalm 119 verse 1 says, the heaven declares the glory of God. Romans tells us that creation speaks of the glory of God. So as we look at nature, as we look at God's creation, as we look to the heavens, we can learn something about God. And here what we see is that fig trees have regular patterns. We know that when you see leaves, you know that the summer is near. So you can determine the seasons with it. Fig trees were a common tree in Israel, and in the Old Testament, they were used to describe the abundance of the land. So it speaks about the land. Fig trees are sometimes used as a symbol or a picture to represent Israel. So my point is we could look and we could see, we can learn. And here's the thing that we need to remember. Jesus isn't referring to the figness, I made up a word, yes. He's not referring to the figness of the fig tree, but how the fig tree follows a reliable growth cycle that is related to the seasons, just like what Jesus is going to do upon his return. He's given us something reliable that we can hold on to. It's called his word, that speaks upon his return. And it was intended to have us look at it and be able to say, okay, these things are happening. We should be able to learn some things, but it's not just so that we know what's going on. It's not just so that we can understand the figness of a fig tree. No, it's so that we would get our lives right. When you compare this to Luke 21, 29 through 31, which is Luke's account of this conversation, it says, then he spoke to them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they are already budding, you see and know for yourselves that summer is now near. So you also, when you see these things happen, know that the kingdom of God is near. Talking about wars, rumors of wars, all those things that we see, natural disasters that are happening. We should look at this and we should say, hey, you know what's happening? Christ could come back. And here's the truth. Jesus is 7 days closer to his return today than he was last week at this time. But how has that impacted your life? That's the question. From last Sunday to this Sunday, how did that impact how you lived? From this Sunday till next Sunday, how is that truth going to impact how you live? See, the fig tree shows us that summer is near, that fruit is coming. And in the same way that when we see these signs coming, Jesus is going to come in his glory, is shortly going to be here. So we should be ready. Jesus assures us that the Great Tribulation isn't going to continue indefinitely too. I love that. There's a time for this tribulation, but it will have an end. But Jesus says that, assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Who and what generation was he talking about? It's $1 million question that a lot of ink has been shed on. A lot of debates have been held over this fact, wondering who it is and why it is. A lot of people will disagree with it. Some disagree with this translation that says that the generation spoken of here was the race that was around when Jesus was there, that it was the disciples, that he was speaking to them. Problem is, well, they all died and he didn't come back. It's been suggested that the word generation could also be translated race, and that it is a promise that the Jewish race would not be extinguished, but would survive to the end. And it's talking about the Jewish race. People disagree with that too. So I'm going to give you my thought, for whatever it's worth. Do with it what you want. Jesus said that the generation that sees that the events take place would not pass away. Who's this generation? I believe it's us. And I believe it's every generation that went before us. Yeah. And it was the generations that are going to come after us. He was talking to them. You see, because what Jesus wants us to know is not the time of his coming, but that we would be able to discern that time, that we would be able to be attentive to that, to the signs that are there, and that would it impact how we lived our lives today. And that is pertinent for whatever generation you were. Like if for some reason you live back there and you're still here, it means you're old, but but whatever generation. We need to live lives prepared, discerning, and attentive as to what is going to come. And we can look at the signs and we can know that things are happening. But he doesn't stop there. You see in verses 36 through 34, he wants us to be knowledgeable. He just doesn't want us to be able to discern about it. He wants us to be knowledgeable about these things. And he says, but of the day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know it until the flood came and took them away, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. What's interesting is this. Jesus says that the only one that knows when the Son's coming back is the Father. So why do we think that we're going to know? Like, why do people spend thousands of dollars on billboards to tell you the day that Jesus is going to return? Because it's only going to show you how wrong they are. You want me to give you a prediction? When's Jesus coming back? I'll give you. You want to know mine? When the Father tells him to. So the next time somebody says, when's Jesus coming back? When his dad tells him to go. That's it. It's that simple. In the meantime, let's live our life as if it could be today. And if it's not today, keep going in our faith in case it's tomorrow. And if it's not tomorrow, we keep living as if it's next week or next month or next year or 10 years, 20 years. We just move forward looking up. Not losing heart. I mean, if Jesus didn't know the day and the hour, it's so foolish for us to think that anybody could predict the prophetic timetable. He's waiting for his dad to tell him to get his bride. What did Jesus say? He said something like this, I think. I'm going to go and prepare a place for you, and I will return to get you. And we can directly correlate that to a Galilean wedding, because what they would do is they would go home, build the chamber for their bride, but they couldn't do anything until the dad said, all right, the chamber's ready, go get your bride. So what are we waiting for? We're waiting for dad to say, go get your bride. But then he starts talking about the days of Noah. What do we know about the days of Noah? Well, they were marked by violence, demon oppression. People were, living a life that was centered around normal things like eating, drinking, marriage, and life. Pretty much business as usual. What was the difference between the days of Noah and today? Nothing. Nothing. They were doing the same things that we are, just a little bit differently because of culture. Like, they weren't swiping their phones. They weren't walking around like this. Like, they weren't in dangers of running into trees or people. But they had other things that they were preoccupied with. We know that people were warned, and judgment eventually came on those who ignored the warning. They weren't ready. They weren't prepared. They weren't listening. Guys, we must be ready, because his coming for us is going to be without a warning like it was in the days of Noah. But then Jesus illustrates this with some parables. He goes on, verse 40. Then 2 men will be in the field, and one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So here the emphasis is on the fact that people did not know when the day of judgment was going to happen. And that's what we know. We don't know when God is coming back. But here what we're told is that there's going to be people together, and one's going to be taken and one's going to be left. And Jesus points out this disappearance or this catching away of some coming when the Son of Man comes. The verb form taken away here means to be taken away, and it's the same verse used in chapter 1, verse 20, 17, verse 1, 18, verse 16, 20, verse 17, and it applies the taking of someone to be with you. That's what it means. It's we're being taken to be with someone, pointing us to a salvation rather than a destruction that we are taken to. When you combine these three stories, these three parables, what do we end up with? Know that this time is near. Watch and be ready. That's what he says. You see, prophecy should motivate us to live different lives. It should actually cause holiness in our lives, don't you think? Where we get rid of the things that separate us from one another and separate us from God, those things in our lives that shouldn't be there. We should live differently in light of prophecy. And so today, if you're discouraged, let me tell you, there's a lot of discouraged people out there. You depressed? A lot of depressed people out there. Feeling defeated? You know what? There's a lot of people that are feeling like beat up. What's our hope? Jesus is still coming. And he still loves you. Let that sink in for a moment. Whether you're discouraged, defeated, depressed, Jesus is still coming for you because he still loves you. And if you're not watching, he's going to come when you're least expected. So be knowledgeable about the times and the seasons. Why? So that you could be ready when he returns. That's the goal. But then the last thing he's going to point out is that we need to be actively waiting. We don't just sit here doing nothing, waiting, twiddling our thumbs like, it's going to be today. I mean, you've heard the stories of people that have sold everything to do nothing, and he didn't come. The only guy that left is who they gave their money to. I mean, that's the crazy thing. But we need to be actively waiting. In verse 45, it says, "Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods." What are we to be doing in Jesus' absence? Well, we shouldn't be wasting our time scrolling on our phones. We shouldn't be wasting our times as if he's not coming. What do we need to be doing? Well, it's pretty simple. You do what servants do. Serve. It's that simple. It's not like it's rocket science. Well, what do I need to do? You serve. How do you serve? Show up. Make yourself available. It's that simple. How are we actively waiting? We're actively waiting as we serve the Lord by doing what? Serving and loving other people. It's that simple. Jesus says the wise servant is the one who, when he returns, finds him doing good. So what's Jesus going to find you doing when he returns? Now, okay, I'm not saying you should never scroll on your phone or you should never stop and just do nothing. It's okay. But if that's what marks your life, that's a problem. Turn on the screen time, app so you know how much screen time you use during the day. It's kind of crazy when you look at that. And then ask yourself, well, God, where do you want me to serve? How do you want me to serve? Who can I serve? Could you imagine what this world would look like if we tried to outserve each other? Isn't that nuts to think about that? I've done homeless feedings in multiple different countries. Did them in Mexico, done them in the U.S., done them in Kenya, done them in Uganda, and I've done them in Japan. Let me tell you something. Japan was amazing. We showed up, we made rice balls. You know you love somebody if you're making a rice ball. That's all I'm saying. That was the most tedious work we've ever had to do. And what a rice ball was a piece of like tuna wrapped up in a ball of rice. You know how sticky that rice is? Oh, it's so frustrating. You're like, you're losing your mind. And then you show up. We went to this park where all the homeless are, they're all in one spot there. And they came out, probably 500 of them. They all laid newspaper on the ground. They sat in lines. They got their food. They ate their food. We went away to clean things up. When we came back, there was zero sign that there was 500 people there that just ate. They got up, took their newspaper, wrapped it, or whatever. It was like, holy cow. You know how many people are in Japan? A lot. Do you know their streets are clean? Why? Because everybody carries their trash in their pocket to throw it away when they get to a trash can. Think about it. If we lived a life where we just simply said, I want to serve people and not just be served, what would our life look like? What would our world look like? It would look like the kingdom of heaven. That's what the kingdom of heaven is going to be like. Us serving one another. Us loving one another for all of eternity. Verse 48 says, but if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of. And he will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We'll get to the cutting in two in a second. Like, I know you're like, okay, what's he going to say about the cutting in two? Like, let's look at something before we get there. The word evil here is the Greek word kakos, K-A-K-O-S. And it means this. It means something that was once good that has gone bad. It's a word used to describe an instrument that has gone out of tune or a piece of fruit that has gone bad. You see, evil begins in the heart well before it becomes an activity that people perform. And we need to understand that. This evil servant didn't start out evil. But he shows us that time will eventually expose and change us if we don't use our time wisely. As the more time goes by and the more we begin to question, is God really coming? We'll really reveal what's in our hearts. It's going to expose what is there. And look where this guy ended up. What did he end up doing? This servant ended up abusing people. That's what he did. And I believe that you can tell when you are falling into an evil servant mentality by how you treat fellow servants. If you're beating up people verbally, if you're being unkind to them, people get hurt. And I want to tell you this, that's the majority of my counseling, is when people are hurt by other people. How do they deal with that? When good people turn bad. when good people didn't manage their time wisely, when good people hurt people. It happens every day. So how do we protect ourselves from people that are going to hurt me, but also becoming the type of person that could hurt somebody? How do we protect ourselves? Well, by actively waiting and expecting Jesus to return. I don't just go idle. I just don't stand by and do nothing. I continue to serve alongside of people. You know what? There's something supernatural that takes place when you serve alongside somebody. Some of my dearest friends to this day are those that I have served alongside of. Doing crazy, dumb things. I have kids that I did the dumbest things with. You can ask them. I've shared them with you. I'm surprised I'm still alive for some of the dumb things that I did. There was one time we were in Mexico and we were bored. Never give a youth pastor with kids in a third world country nothing to do. That's a recipe for disaster. So we were there. We were supposed to do something, but they changed their mind on what they wanted us to do. So while we were trying to figure out what we were going to do at this home for battered women and children, they said, well, just go to the old place and just kind of wait there until we tell you what to do. Okay. Not good. So I come walking out, and in the middle of this road, these kids took a post hole digger and dug a hole in the middle of the road, the whole length of a post hole digger. I'm looking at this thinking, how did you do that? And then my thought was, why did you do that? What got into your head to think that why? That was the kids. Of course, I have to one-up them. Not in that Mexico trip. In Kenya, we heard there's a crocodile swimming in the lake or the little creek down below. So don't go down there. One of the things you never tell a youth pastor, don't go or don't do. So me and my brilliant mind, I'm like, hey, I got some rope. Let's go fishing for crocodiles. So I take the sausage in the morning. I tie it to the end of the rope. The sausage was gross, but I tied it there. Throw it into the thing. Wrap the rope around my arm. And I'm fishing for a crocodile. For about 3 minutes. And then it hit me. Hey, dummy, what are you going to do if you catch it? And I'm thinking two things are happening at this point. My arm's either going to get yanked out, and I'm going to fish for a crocodile with my arm, or I'm going over into the water, and the crocodile's going to eat me, or I've got to wrestle this crocodile. Either way, I lose. I am surprised I am alive. But to this day, those kids that I take into these different places are some of my dearest friends. And we may not be in contact with each other very frequently, but when we do get together, it's like we never skipped a beat. You see, something happens when we serve alongside people. You serve alongside me, you're going to get dumb stories. Just telling you right now, you're going to be like, how in the world? Just deal with it. Like, enjoy it. Like, thank God that he gave you a gift of laughter. Like, hey, I'm hanging out with him. Look what he did. But there's something that happens. It's something that's protective. As we actively wait, we serve. You know what will happen when we're actively waiting? You'll treat your wife differently, men. You're going to love them deeper. You're going to go tree shopping. Not because you care about trees, but because you care about your life and you want to be with her. Now, I know I do want a tree, by the way, just so you know. I'm just trying to make my story funny. But we will treat our wives differently, our families differently, our friends differently, because we believe that Jesus is coming back. And if he's coming back, we want him to find us doing what he would be doing. You know what will happen? We'll talk differently to each other about people. It's going to impact the way we talk. Why? Because we believe that Jesus could show up at any moment. And what do we want to have him hear us saying? You're not going to push people around. You're not going to put people down. You're not going to beat people up if you believe Jesus is coming back tomorrow or by the end of the service. So if you want to be ready, here's what you got to do. Put away the things you once worshiped and look for Jesus. Jesus isn't trying to manipulate you into serving him or to get more servants. He's just wanting to come and walk with you daily. That's what he's wanting. And you want to know what the most dangerous lie in the world is? It's not that there's no God. It's not that there's no hell. The most dangerous lie in the entire world is there's no need to hurry. You can do it tomorrow. But the faithful and wise servant, what we're told here, they both get rewards. The evil servant was rewarded for his wickedness. The faithful one was rewarded for his faithfulness. The wicked one has his portion with the hypocrites. And we're told they cut him in two. This is what you guys were all waiting for. I know. What does it mean, Shawn? Tell us. What does it mean? You ready? Here's the big reveal. I don't know. I have no idea what it meant. It was a story. It was a parable. It didn't really happen. Okay, what do I know then about this? The word cut means to be cut into two parts. So where am I going with that? I'm going that there's going to be judgment and a cutting away of the things in our life that shouldn't be there. Somehow it's linked to weeping and gnashing of teeth. And you know what? I still don't know what it means. I don't. But let's not focus on what I don't know or what we don't know. But let's focus on what we do know. And that is that Jesus tells us to be actively waiting while he's gone. Let's wait for him actively. Let us be faithful and wise servant, caring about our master's business while he's away. Constantly anticipating that today's the day that he's going to come. As we love Jesus and love others through faithful service. You see, we don't know when Jesus will return for his church, but we do know we must be discerning, attentive, knowledgeable, and actively waiting until he does. To simply put it, we need to make Jesus famous as we love every heart that comes through our doors. But not just on Sunday, but we need to also love every heart that crosses our path during the week. So guys, while we're waiting, would you join me as we add to Jesus' fame while we wait for his return? Because that's what he's asked us to do.